All right, hello, Chase Oaks. Good to see everybody. And whether you've been here a long time or you're new at Chase Oaks, by the way, you're a Chase Oaker. If you've been here once or more and you want to be in, you're in. So we're glad to see all of you. And that's true not just here at Legacy. Great to see all the Legacy peeps out here, but also at our other campuses. So I want to welcome those of you at our Sloan Creek campus, at our Woodbridge campus, in Espanol, as well as all of you who are online, including my family in Alabama right now and wherever you are. As today we jump into our second week of this series called Margin, where we're looking at a very atypical choice in our culture to say, I'm not going to live up to the limit or over the limit of my time, of my commitments, of my spending, but I'm actually going to say I'm going to live on less than my limits. I'm going to choose to have breathing room so that I can make room in my life for interruption. I can make room in my life for God. I can make room in my life for relationships. I can make room in my life for what's most important. Because the alternative, a marginless life, I think a lot of us know when we're overcommitted, overstressed, all that, and live in overdrive, that's a problem. But I also think in our culture, even though we think, yeah, that's a problem, it's a problem that's hard to take seriously. In fact, there's even a little bit of maybe pride when we're in over busy mode all the time. It's like, when people say, hey, how you doing? And the other person says, oh man, I am so busy. It's being slammed, man. It's just crazy busy. Like, oh man, I know, me too. And it's like a little competition, And it's kind of like you're saying, I'm kind of a big deal. I'm kind of a bigger deal, right? When's the last time you asked, you talked to somebody, you said, hey, how you been doing? You been busy lately? And they were like, no. I really haven't been doing much anything. Yeah, I don't do much. Be like, wow, what's your deal? And it's one of those problems that we can kind of pat on the head, even though we may know it's a problem, kind of pat on the head like it's a cute little problem, But what I want us to understand is that just because something is cute or we can treat it that way doesn't mean it's not dangerous. And so to amplify that and to kind of lock that in, we're about to see a clip from a TV show, Modern Family, where Phil Dunphy learns that lesson. Just because something's cute doesn't mean it's not dangerous. Let's watch the quick clip.
Are you okay, Phil?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just wish Claire was here to see all this. Plus, my foot's twice its normal size, and the mosquitoes are really going after my jellyfish bites.
Look, a sign.
What?
You wanted to see a kangaroo, and now you see one. I think this is your mother trying to tell you that the rest of the trip is going to be magical, Phil.
That is so my mom to say it was a kangaroo. Look, it's so beautiful.
Okay, but be careful, you're going to scare him.
G'day, mate. Hey. There you go.
Okay. Now, wouldn't it be awesome to have that on a loop instead of listening to me for the next however many minutes? We just watch that over and over again, right? And thanks for not getting too excited. 9:30 got a little too excited about that idea. But let's at least see it one more time, just the quick part.
There you go.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, just because something's cute doesn't mean it doesn't come with a punch. And a marginless life comes with a really big punch. This impacts all of life. Here's basically what we're signing up for when you and I choose to live a marginless life, which is typically just how we live in our culture. When we're overcommitted, we're constantly stressed and anxious, which means, and we're not the best versions of ourselves because of that, so we tend to be grumpy, more demanding, intolerant, more prone to conflict, and when we have conflict, we don't handle it very well. We live much more isolated lives when we're so, busy with all this stuff to do. We live disconnected from people, from God, shallow. You can't go deep at 90 miles an hour, living life that way with God or with anybody. More prone to sin, which just means when we are overstressed and overstretched and overbusy, we become easy prey for temptation. Because sin can feel like, in the short run, an escape. The truth is, it just gets us in prison. It just gets us in deeper. It just gets us in a hole. Sin never is helpful, but at the time, it's just easy to justify things when we're overstressed and overstretched. We tend to make foolish decisions. We don't think things through. We live ineffective lives because all we're doing is responding to urgent things, and we don't realize the more important things in life that we're cheating. So you look at this and you think, well, who would sign up for that, right? But we all do when we choose a marginless life. And in our culture, it's just so hard to take this one seriously, which is why I think it's really cool that many or most of you are doing just that in this series. I mean, you're here, so, pat yourself on the back for that, to talk about margin. But also, there's a few thousand people, a little over 3,000 now, who have taken the book, Margin. If you haven't done that yet, it just follows along daily. And then there's a small group or family discussion guide in that to say, hey, let's go deep with this. There's about 300 people who, in addition just to all of our small groups already that are doing this, who've said, hey, in this series, I'm going to start another small group. And anybody can do that. You don't have to be an official something to start a margin group. Just grab some books and get together with some neighbors and friends. And that's really cool because you think about all the life change that's going to happen. It's pretty amazing. And in this series, we're not just talking about just sort of in a shallow way. Here's a few little tips on how to do your calendar differently or how to do your budget. We're really going deeper than that. And today is a great example as we're talking about today what actually drives us at a deep level to say yes to all the things we tend to say yes to. Like what tends to drive us in a way that causes us to live in hyperdrive. Because if you and I don't deal with those deeper drivers, then we're never really going to make any significant changes. And so today I want us to be really open to say, okay, God, I'm open to look more deeply into my soul. God, speak into my soul to say what tends to really drive my life. Because if we're driven by the wrong things, we'll drive at the wrong pace, we'll tend to go to the wrong destination, miss the destination in wrong direction. Of course, none of us want that. So we're going to be looking at this. This is a kind of an intervention moment for many of us by looking at an intervention moment in the life of one of the Bible's heroes, and that's a guy named Moses. Now, a lot of us are familiar with the name Moses, right? The Prince of Egypt movie, the old Charlton Heston movies. If you're not overly familiar, he's the let my people go before Pharaoh. You with me? Yeah, thank you. And but we're looking at a time in his life where he is in hyperdrive, and God intervenes in a gracious way through a close relationship in his life, and he has the opportunity to make some changes, the kind of changes we're talking about in this series. So if you're following along with me in the Bible or Bible app, we're in the second book of the Bible, Exodus. So it's easy to find in the book of Exodus. And to catch us up in the story, what's happened is Moses has done he's seen the burning bush, and God said, hey, you're the one that's going to go before Pharaoh, and all of God's people in the Old Testament era, the nation of Israel, are enslaved in Egypt, 2 million of them, and you're going to go before Pharaoh and say, let my people go. That's what God says. And so he does that. And it's a process, but eventually Pharaoh's like, okay, let them go. So all 2 million of them start making the trip to what is now Israel, to the promised land. But in the way is the Red Sea, and that gets a little tense because Pharaoh changes his mind, tells his army, go get them and bring my slave force back. And so there's the Red Sea. They're like, what's going to happen? If you remember the story, God parts the Red Sea, they cross, and then when the army is coming across the Red Sea to get them, it closes up. So no more army, frees up the people of God to go to the promised land. God guides them on the way with a cloud by day and fire by night. He takes them on the scenic route there, kind of the long way, and a lot of things happen. And where we find ourselves today is they are stopped at this mountain called Mount Horeb, nicknamed the Mountain of God. It's right where he has seen the burning bush before. Other things happen there too. And it's also pretty close to where his father-in-law lives and where he has sent his wife and 2 boys, his 2 kids, to live with father-in-law for a while. And they're right in that area, and here's what happens, Exodus 18:1. Now Jethro, who's his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, father-in-law Moses, and I love the name Jethro, I guess because I'm from Alabama, but also because I'm Jeff, and my granddad, that was his nickname for me. It was not Jethro, but Jethro, and so I kind of feel, he's my guy, Jethro. The priest of Midian, so he was a big deal, and the father-in-law of Moses heard of everything God had done for Moses and for the people of Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' son and wife, came to him in the wilderness where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons. Now, I'm going to stop here for a little bit because it's kind of at least to me, a little troubling part of the story. Because it's not Moses' idea to reunite with his family. He is sent away sometime before when he was in Egypt and doing the, Pharaoh thing. He had sent his wife and kids to go home to granddad or go home with dad and go spend time there. But that was a long time ago. And now he comes, it's still a journey, but he comes in the much closer to where his family is, and it's not his idea to reunite with his family. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's even thinking about his family. It's father-in-law's idea that's saying, honey, you need to go back to your husband. Grandkids, you need to go back to your dad. And just Moses isn't thinking about that. And as we're going to see in the story, he is in hyperdrive, hyper busy. I mean, I think he was so busy leading God's people, it's almost like he forgot about his family. And I'm going to pause there because for certain ones of us with certain personalities, it's actually easy to do that and not know it. To kind of be so committed to what we're doing, to the task, to our career, to our accomplishment, to the next thing, that we don't even realize what we're doing and how easy it is, right, to minimize family, to almost act like, one day I'll get to that. One day it'll be different, and that day never comes. I mentioned this was a few years ago now, when my youngest son, Caleb, who was a freshman in college then, it was on Father's Day. I was speaking on Father's Day weekend, and I shared with the church the gift he had given me that morning. And it was an email, and in that email was a downloaded song with a little note. Anybody remember the downloaded song? It was Cats in the Cradle. You know that old father guilt song, Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue and the Man in the Moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then. Yeah, we're going to have a good time then. And it never happens. He never has time for his kid. Then his kid grows up, and the dad wants to spend time with him, and he's like, sorry, I don't have time. And all that. That's the song, okay? So it was that song, and then he said, Happy Father's Day, just kidding, you're a great dad, love Caleb. And that was my gift. And it's like, yeah, that was awesome, which for Caleb, that is awesome, actually. But there was a time in my life where I did allow that to happen. And there was a time in my parenting for, year and a half, 2-year period when Caleb was 0 to 2 and Colin was 3 to 5, where I really wasn't around very much. And I had helped start this organization where I was traveling all over the world and all over the country, speaking and doing things. When I was here, we were starting all these programs and all this stuff that I was doing. I was speaking for 2 other organizations as well and traveling around. It was almost like, well, I've just got to. Like, it's just what I do. It's just what's in front of me. And I didn't realize what I was doing until my wife finally called a timeout. Now, I've shared that story before, so I won't share it in big detail. You can say amen, hallelujah. I don't want to hear that one again. But she did call a timeout and say, look, I'm just not going to enable this anymore. I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to let you miss the childhood of your kids. And I didn't see it until she called a timeout. Because I thought, well, I'm around here, but I really wasn't in a significant way. And I made some really significant changes at that time in my life. It was an intervention moment. And this is an intervention moment from Jethro, his father-in-law, to his son-in-law. Basically saying, dude, by bringing his family back, dude, you've got a family. Like, you've got a wife who needs you. You've got kids who need you. And some of us in this room right now need that intervention. To hear God say, dude, or dudess if you're a girl, you've got a family. You've got a spouse. You've got kids. And they need you, right? And it is so easy to get caught up and just not even realize what we're doing. So that's part of what's going on here. So he comes, he brings the family, they greet each other. Verse 7. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. But next time, if you're married, next time your father-in-law comes, give this a shot. Bow down and then plant one on him. Just see, just for fun. They greeted each other and then went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. Now, this is really significant and really cool because Jethro at the start of their relationship, was not a believer in the one true God. He now is a believer in the one true God, and the fact that he recognizes that and sees that. This is a really cool moment, right? So this is a great moment in the tent. They're high-fiving each other. It's all good. Moses goes to bed that night, really excited, I guess excited to be reunited with his family, though it doesn't mention that. And then he wakes up the next day, can't wait, because it's take your father-in-law to work day, evidently. Because he's going to bring Jethro, who is a big shot in Midian, he's going to bring Jethro to work. And it's kind of cool because Moses is kind of a big deal. There's 2 million people. He's at the top of that pyramid. He's at the top of the org chart. And here's what going to work with Moses looks like. Verse 13, the next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. So basically what happens, there's 2 million people out there, and they're all waiting to talk to Moses because anybody who needs wisdom from God, anybody who needs direction, anybody who there's a conflict and they need resolution, they all come to him. So they're all lined up, just hundreds and hundreds of people. He's in his big chair. They're all coming. He's dispensing his big wisdom and all of that. And at the end of that day, long day, I'm sure he couldn't wait to debrief with his father-in-law, Jethro. Realize, maybe he didn't realize what a big deal I really was. Like, this was an awesome day. He's waiting for Jethro to say, wow, man, I thought I was a big deal. Wow, that's amazing. But that's not what happens. Verse 14, when his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this you're doing for the people? Meaning, like, why are you doing this? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening in these long lines? Like, what are you thinking? And Moses answered him, I'm sure a little defensively. Well, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. I'm doing this because they come to me. And I'm just serving them because they're coming to me, and I'm the guy. I'm the one that needs to do this because, I know God's instructions. Moses' father-in-law replied, what you're doing is not good. Now that had to sting. That had to be unexpected, but I'm sure it also rung true. Hey, what you're doing you think is good, but it is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you, and you cannot handle it alone. You cannot be the person who cares for 2 million people by yourself. It's not working. Why are you doing this? Now, it's always cool whenever we confront somebody, if we not only have the prescription, hey, here's a problem, but also to have a cure. Maybe here's a direction you can go. And Jethro not only has the prescription, but also has the cure. He has a way forward, and here's what it is. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. In other words, at this part, he's saying, hey, you figure out what you need to do and cannot delegate. Like as the leader of the people, there are certain things that you should not delegate that are really important for you to do. But everything else, what he's going to say next is you need to delegate. Because if you're doing everything else, you're not doing what you uniquely are called to do, and everybody loses when that happens. So you decide, hey, this is what you need to focus on, and then delegate. He says, but select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. So here's basically what he's saying. At the beginning of the conversation, here was the span of care, the span of management that Moses had, 1 to 2 million. Now think about that. I don't know how many people, if you manage people at work, I don't know how many direct reports you have. I don't know how many performance reviews you have to do every 6 months or every year, however many you do. But my guess is you don't have 2 million, right? Imagine that. 2 million direct reports, 2 million performance reviews, right? Just kill me now. But 2 million, nobody can do that. Or let's say you're a teacher. You're a kindergarten teacher. Can you imagine a classroom of 2 million kindergartners? And that's not manageable, right? And that's kind of what Moses was trying to do. And through Jethro's advice, it takes the span of care from 1 to 2 million all the way down to 1 to 10. Now, you don't have to be a management genius to know, well, that's better, right? And that's way better. And the great news for Moses is he was humble enough to listen to advice. He was humble enough to listen to advice from his father-in-law even, which is pretty amazing. And here's what it says. Moses listened, verse 24, to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country, left the family behind, but returned to his own country. So Moses listens to the advice, and think about what happens when he did. This is an intervention. He listens. He makes some changes. And because of the changes he made, everybody won. I mean, first of all, Moses wins, right? Because he's not overtaxed and constantly overburdened. The people win because they actually get their needs met. They're not waiting in line all day after day after day after day, hoping that maybe one day they'll get to talk to Moses and they'll be the first in line. They actually get their needs met. The people that Moses delegates to win because these were people, capable people, gifted by God, people of character, people who were, who had an opportunity now to actually serve and live out their calling, live out their gifting, thousands of people, because Moses got out of the way so that he could then release them to do what they do. Of course, Moses' family wins because now he can actually receive his family and be with his family. He wins because I'm sure he wanted to do that too. And we win also. I mean, here's the way we won in that, because this allowed Moses to focus on what he needed to focus on for the people, which meant clarifying God's decrees and instructions, and really including writing 5 books of the Bible one of which we're reading right now: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Had he never listened to Jethro and just sat there in that chair all day, as far as I know, we wouldn't have these 5 books in the Bible. So we win too. Everybody won. Because that's what happens when we're willing to listen to others and listen to wisdom who intervene in our life, when we are over in hyperdrive and overdrive and not living life well, not living life in margin, and we make the changes. It gives opportunity for everything in our life that we want to win to win. And my prayer today is that today and in this series will be a Jethro kind of moment, not just for Moses, a history lesson, but a Jethro moment for all of us. The way we're living right now, with all that we're doing, all we're saying yes to, that we would sort of hear Jethro say to you and me, if he lived a day with us or lived a week with us, look at you and me and say, why are you doing this? I mean, you're doing a lot of good things, don't get me wrong, but why are you saying yes to all you're saying yes to? Why do you feel like you've got to be the one to do all this? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to others? Why are you compromising what's more important? Why? It's a big question to ask, right? And it really gets deeper because it gets down to the why question, gets down to, well, yeah, what is driving me to do that? What does drive me to overcommit and overspend and stress? Let's think about that a little bit. And we get a big hint with Moses' response to the Jethro question. Here was his answer. Well, why? Because the people come to me to seek God's will. And whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me. And I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. And notice I highlighted the me's and the I's. He's just saying, well, they come to me. I don't want to let them down. How can I let them down? They're coming to me. I mean, I'm the guy. I'm the one. And I'm the one that does this because I'm the best guy to do it. I mean, who else is going to? I'm the one to do this. And essentially what he's doing is inflating his own importance, like he's the only one who can do this. As we saw, he's not the only one, but that's the way it's me. It's got to be me. I'm the best one to do it. They come to me. I don't want to let people down. And another word for that is, and it's the same thing that drives us to overcommit, is pride. It's just elevating self. I mean, part of it is to serve people, sure, but there's another part of it, the dark part of it, when we overcommit, we're simply overinflating our self-importance when we do more than God's called us to do. So I want us to be really open to this, but to pride in our life. And pride is so vague and it's so big, it's like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. So pride has a number of faces, and we're going to look at some of the things that drive us that are just faces of pride. And I want us to be really open. Like right now, if you're a Christ follower, just say, God, speak to me. You know, which one of these are driving me? Which one of these do I need to focus on? Because of the list that I'm going to share, one or two of them are going to hit you like a kangaroo. Just bam. Like, you know, just like we just saw. Just hit you like a kangaroo in the middle. You know, you're like, oh, man, didn't see that coming. And a couple of them will be like, yeah, whatever. I don't think, you know, that doesn't really hit me. So let's just be open. The first face of pride that could drive us to overcommit is people-pleasing. Now, as a lifetime member of the people-pleasing club, I can relate to this one, all right? Because isn't it fun, if you're a people-pleaser, to when somebody asks you to do something or there's a need, I mean, is it not the best thing in the world to just be able to say, oh, I'd love to do that, and to hear them say, oh, I'm so glad. I was so worried you would say no, and you're just so awesome. You're so great. Man, I knew I could count on you. I know you're already busy, but I knew you're the kind of guy that would do that, or you're the kind of girl that would do it. And I love hearing that, but I hate letting people down. I hate when somebody asks me to do something or whatever, and to look at them and say, I'm sorry, I'd love to, but I can't. And you see the disappointment, and it's no fun, you know? And it's like, And as a pastor, that's been maybe one of the hardest lessons to learn in this job, because it is such an open-ended job, and there's a lot of people with a lot of needs and a lot of requests and all that. And my heart, I mean, and part of it is the dark side of me. I want to please people, not disappoint people. And right, I just want to say yes. And as the church has grown, there's a lot more things I've had to say no to. In fact, the elder board, which is our board of directors, with certain functions and ceremonies and things like that, I would always say yes to. And they just said, you know, you're not good at saying yes, so we're going to take away your ability to say yes to certain things. And we're going to ask you not to do them, because I don't think you can say yes. You can say no. So they took away my ability to say yes. But it was hugely helpful for a people pleaser. Now, maybe you can relate. And part of it, when we please people, it's not just a dark side. Part of it is we really do want to serve them. There's a good part, but there's this dark side, which is really more about us than it is about serving. So, people pleasing. Another one, perfectionism. That is, we say yes to too much, or we hang on to too much. You know why? Because we feel like we'll do it right. And if I let it go, probably not going to be done right. And if it's going to be done right, I'm going to do it myself, because I know the way I want it done. And I know, I feel like I'm the best person. And Moses had some of that. I'm the guy. I mean, who's better than the burning bush guy to do that? I mean, I'm the guy, right? And I can relate to this one too. I talked about making those major changes when Christy called a foul and said, hey, I'm not going to let you miss the life of your kids anymore. And thankfully, at the time, I was able, through our pastors and elder board at our church here, enable me to make some big changes in my life, which meant we had started this organization called the Center for Church-Based Training, and where I was traveling around the world, speaking, doing all this stuff, and running this organization. And I was able to hire James Roberts, a guy in our church, to lead that. And then able to hire Glenn Breckner, who's still on our staff, to operate all the things that I'd started, these programs I'd started at this church. So we hired those two people. Now, to be honest, and I don't like saying this out loud, I knew these were two great people or I wouldn't have hired them, but I was really afraid, boy, when I take a step back, I'm afraid these things are going to take a hit. Like it's going to get worse if I take a step back. But you know what happened? It didn't get worse. It got way better. I mean, both of them. It was so humbling, humiliating even, because they're better operational leaders than me. And so they stepped into that role, and what I was doing, they just saw as a starting place, like, well, it's okay, but there's a lot more we can do. And they do their thing, and they do their thing, and both got way better, and they fulfilled their calling, but it meant me stepping back and giving this up. And some of us in this room are hanging on to things that we don't need to be hanging on to. And we need to be able to release them so that others can take them where God wants them to go. Another one is praise, motivated by praise of people and being the hero and the one who saves the day. And this is similar to people-pleasing, but people-pleasing is a little bit more fear-based. I don't want to let people down. Praise is just, I like being the hero. I like being the one that says, man, how does he do that? Or if you're a girl, how does she do that? I mean, some people who they do so much, and you're like, how do they do? And it's cool being that person. The person that everybody's saying that about. How does she do everything? It is amazing. She's got those little kids, and then she's got that, and she does that, and she keeps saying, it is amazing. It's cool being that person, right? And some people have a lot of capacity, can do things, but if we're motivated by praise, then we'll go into overdrive. Possessions is another one. I mean, if you are, if you're working, if you get promotions, if you get commissions, if you get sales, the more you do, the more money you have, the more stuff you get. And after a while, stuff can just you don't realize it's driving you, but just getting nicer stuff and bigger stuff and more stuff can start driving your life. And I mean, I know we all know that, possessions don't bring happiness, and we hear that all the time and stuff, right? But if you give me a beach house and a Ferrari, I'm willing to give it a shot, to test the theory, right? I mean, it's not that everything's bad, but possessions are a bad driver because, the new thing only satisfies so long, and then there's another new thing and another new thing and another new thing, and you don't realize that we're actually being led by stuff, and so possessions can do that. Another one is proving myself. It's really easy, especially depending on personality, to put our identity in our performance or in our career or, whatever, right? It's just really easy to put my identity in that. And if I do that, which I can do that, if I do that, then I'm going to be driven to go into overdrive, to prove to myself and prove to everybody how great I am. And to feel good about myself, and to feel better and better and better about myself. Or if you grew up in an environment maybe where you were told you'll never amount to anything, or you're a loser or whatever, then that can be another motivation, just to, I'll show them, right? To start doing way more than God really wants us to do. Prestige and position are other ones. Again, there's nothing wrong with a big job title or a big office, or nothing wrong with being well known, unless that's driving us, because it will drive us into hyperdrive. I mean, I would love to say that when I was doing that stuff, when I was speaking at all those conferences and going around, I'd love to say that this had nothing to do with it, prestige, and I liked being a little bit better known, but it did. I mean, part of it is I wanted to be helpful to pastors, but I like seeing my name on conference brochures. It was kind of cool to see that. And when I made those changes, I started saying no to every outside speaking opportunity, just for a time in my life, because that's what I needed to do. It doesn't mean it's wrong to do that, but that's what I needed to do. And it's amazing, because once you start saying no for about 6 months, you know what happens? Nobody asks anymore. And I was just off the circuit, And for a little while, that bothered me, but looking back, honestly, I don't miss that. There's not 1 ounce of me missing that at this stage. I mean, I just that was a phase of my life. Glad it happened, but, because some of my identity was there in a way that caused me to say yes too much. Posting is another one that Moses could not relate to, right? Because Moses wasn't on Instagram. He wasn't on Facebook. He didn't have he didn't went on Twitter or Snapchat or whatever, right? And somebody in between service says, yeah, but wouldn't he have the most awesome selfies ever? Like the Red Sea, or the snake and the thing, the staff. I mean, he'd have like the best selfies in the history of social media. But that can start driving us, right? Just that comparison stuff of, hey, look at my vacation. Look at my insightful thought about this. Or look at, and it's none of it's bad, but if it drives us, it's a bad driver. So as we look at these different faces of pride, which one of these hits you like a kangaroo? My guess is 1 or 2 of these. I mean, you've heard me talk, so it's like, dude, like all of them seem to get you. But you pick the 1 or 2 that hit you, okay? Because we're going to go to God with this. And my prayer is that this really will be a Jethro moment in our life, where you and I can hear, even though it's a little harder to hear now at the Legacy campus with the rain, that you and I can hear God say, or like Jethro, what are you doing? I mean, even with all we're doing, even though many of them are great things, can you imagine Jethro looking at your life and hearing God speak into our life today? What you're doing is not good, even though you're doing a lot of good things. I mean, you're serving the people, but this is not good. Why are you doing this to yourself? Because nobody's winning, and you don't even realize it. And the things that are most important, you're actually losing. I mean, it's similar to what Jesus said, his question. What good is it if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Like what if you get everything you want, but you lose what's most important, your soul, your deep connection to God, your deep connection to others, significance and meaning? You know, is it really worth that? Because if we don't every once in a while listen to interventions to say, hey, what is actually driving me? We'll be on the wrong side of the question here. So let's go to God with this. He wants to help us. He's for us. So let's go to him in prayer. Just bow our heads together, close our eyes. The way I like to close messages out a lot is just giving us a little margin, a little space to talk to God. If you have a relationship with God through faith in Jesus, God is our Father. So you don't have to say the right words or use preacher words or the right spiritual words. He just is your Father who wants you to talk to him. And so right now, just ask him. Just say, God, where am I driven the wrong way? God, which one of these tends to drive me off pace or off course? God, where in my life right now would you say, why are you doing all that? And then ask him to help you. To say, God, now help me be driven by your will, by your glory, by love for other people. And even give me the ability maybe to say no. And to make some big changes if I need to make some big changes. God, help this be an intervention moment in my life, just like it was for Moses. Father, I thank you for how you are for us. I thank you for the practicality of the Bible. I thank you for how you show us your heroes in a way that can help us learn from what they had to learn. And I pray that you would help us in this series choose to live differently than maybe we would naturally live. And help us to be driven the right way and avoid some of these other drivers. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.